breakout session at ARAT, and I am delighted to welcome Martin and Claudette, who are going to be talking about a critical topic for anybody working in this field, and that is around developing a self-care plan. It's very much in line with lots of conversations that we've had this year within our global learning community. And I think that coming out of COVID has accentuated it for many people who are working in the field of anti-trafficking. So without further ado, I will hand over to you both. Thank you for joining us and for taking time to be with us and help us on this journey today.
Thank you, Helen. Welcome, everybody.
We're delighted to be here.
I'm just going to start with a good old screen share. That way everybody can see the presentation, and then we will jump straight into it. I think if I do it this way, I should see this in a short moment. There we go. Nice, got the thumbs up from Helen.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so Helen, can I put you in charge if we do have unmuted participants that come in? Do you have access to mute if there's not a question? Thank you. Amazing. All right, well, we are working off two screens. So if we see Martin looking downwards, he's just got his second screen up there.
That way we can have the chat open, and if there are any questions, we can address them immediately or at the end.
So we're excited to have you here today. We will jump straight into information and give a little bit more of an intro about us. So here's a nice mug picture of us. So Martin and I are both clinical psychologists. We're also married, even though it looks like I have a different last name. That is just my professional last name, but we're a married couple, and we are so passionate about the issues of anti-human trafficking. So we're really excited to share our knowledge and understanding with you. And yeah, we're looking forward to just imparting some information to you. Yeah.
And we work for Victorious Minds, which is our business, and we do a lot with organizations and also with churches around being trauma informed, about taking good care of the staff from an organizational perspective, but also for the workers themselves to be really aware of themselves, to take good care of themselves, so that everybody is able to stay in here for the long run, that it's not a short sprint where we are full of passion and burn out quick, but that we can stay in there for the long run. We are Delena from Dark Bali, one of the organizers, asked us to be here today to talk with you guys a little bit about how to develop a self-care plan. And it's going to be a little bit of information in the beginning, but also a lot of time just real practical, that we do it together with you to make a self-care plan, so that hopefully at the end, all of you have a little draft of a self-care plan that you can work with.
So just quick admin steps. We love questions. So if at any point you're unsure about something we've explained, or you'd like to know a little bit more about it, then please put that question into the chat and we will address things if we can as it goes. We encourage you taking notes, because we know from the research that the more information you write down, the more you will remember it. So if there's something that stands out to you that we shared today, we would love you to take a note on it just to hold on to it and remember it for later. Obviously, we're working in the internet world, so connections might drop out. Hopefully ours stays okay. If not, then hopefully, Helen, you can give us a little wave and we'll repeat if we need to. Hey, we have got the comment saying video on. That's just because we love seeing faces, but I understand that it might not work if your internet connection is not good, or if you're not comfortable in having your video on. But if you are comfortable with it, then we encourage you to put it on. That's up to you. And then obviously just the etiquette of having your microphone off unless you're asking a question. And then the last thing is the practical activity. So I hope you've come ready to do a little bit of a activity with us in a short moment. All right, so here is just our hope and goal. So if you have a look here, we've got the goal is that at the end of this workshop that you will be able to identify and implement strategies for your own self-care so that you can promote a healthy lifestyle among those who engage with trauma survivors. So we know that everybody here is that is relevant for you. Everybody is working with trauma survivors. And so we're hoping that you can just learn how to have a good lifestyle to stay in it for the long run. All right.
So we're going to talk about first quickly about what is self-care and about why is self-care important. And we only have an hour, so we know that we're going to run really quick through it. But if you have any questions afterwards, please feel free to put it in either the chat or in the Q&A at the end, because normally we take a little bit more time to go through it. So we will rush that part a little bit. But then after that, we'll talk about a model for self-care and making a self-care plan with you guys. So that's on the agenda.
All right. First thing, let's get your brains engaged to start with. Now, this is something just to reflect on yourself. You don't need to unmute or to answer unless you want to put your answer in the chat. It's more just for your own reflective thinking. Mythbusters. Do you think, so just have a think about it, is this true or not true? If I get burnt out, it means I'm working hard and doing a good job. True or untrue? All right. Well, to give you the answer, I hope that you had to think about it. It is definitely untrue. So
you most likely work really hard, but also most likely don't do a good job anymore when you reach the state of being burned out.
Number two, true or untrue? Just have a think about it. I'm being selfish if I take a break when there is so much to do. Well, we'll give you the answer. That is also untrue.
Though it can feel that way sometimes, but reality is that our body, our brain, the way that we do things, we need breaks in order to refresh ourselves and to do the work well. So if we don't take a break, then at the end of the break, at the end of the day, we don't do a good job anymore.
So it's good to take breaks, even if there's a lot of work to do, to try and reset your mind. Number three, I'm the only one going through this and I must be weak. I will give away the answer. That is also untrue. It does not mean that if you feel a sense of burnout or if you're stressed or if there's a lot going on for you, that does not mean that you are weak. It just means that you're human and none of us are invincible to these struggles.
And you're also definitely not the only one, because we have been with a lot of different organizations and everywhere we come across people that struggle.
Lucky last.
Lucky last.
I am immune to psychological problems. Is that true or untrue? Well, without even giving you time to think about it, I hope that you've already guessed that all of these are actually untrue. So it is not true. So therefore, nobody is immune to psychological problems. We can all be at risk of developing depression or anxiety or burnout, something like that.
However, proper self-care just reduces the chance of psychological problems.
So what is this buzzword, self-care? Let's look at some definitions of it before we jump into it. So we've got three different ones up here. The first one is from the World Health Organization. This one here, I'll read out the information to you. So It is the ability of individuals, families, and communities to promote health, prevent disease, maintain health, and to cope with illness and disability with or without the support of a professional or healthcare provider. It includes any activity that we do deliberately to take care of our own mental, emotional, and physical health. And lastly, the strategies can help us to manage the impact of stress and trauma in our lives.
Sounds great, but why is it then so important? Well, as some researchers around self-care have described, people who undertake self-care as an expression of collective harmony may be avoiding being a burden on their families, their communities, and society. In other words, when you take care of yourself, you are actually better able to support and be present with the people around you.
Some people we've heard say self-care is selfish, and this is just something to say that's completely not true. And I'm glad that you're shaking your head on that one, Helen. So this shows that you actually, in order to best look after other people, you also need to look after yourself. So we kind of already started a little bit into that intro of why it's important.
So you need to take it seriously and protect yourself. You can continue.
Yeah.
Because without self-care, your skills and your judgment in your work can be severely compromised. So it's not just for your own well-being, but it's also important for your clients. Well, I can talk another hour for what happens in the brain that shows that what happens in the brain when you don't take care of yourself results in that you can't take care of other people. We don't have time for it, but there's literally a biological, but also a psychological reason for why self-care is so important if you want to give your best to the survivors of human trafficking.
It's an interesting topic because as psychologists, this is something that's even part of our ethical requirement. So it is part of our registration and continuing as a psychologist to maintain self-care. And like this statement said, that it's unethical if you don't. So we don't even see it as a privilege or something bonus to do, but it's actually ingrained in the work that we do. That's how important it is.
An absolute basic.
All right. Now, this pretty picture here is a reminder that the work that you do has occupational hazards. So not really like what this picture has. It might not be the tripping or falling off a ladder or falling off a chair, but a different type of an occupational hazard. So more the mental and emotional effect.
So here you can see it in different pictures, the occupational hazards. It has an impact on your psychological health, on your emotions, your existential hazard. That sounds like a really difficult word, but that is literally your feeling of belonging and a sense of meaning and purpose in your life. And also your cognitive hazard, the way that your brain functions, your ability to problem solve and to think. All of those things are at risk if we don't take care of ourselves.
All right. So hopefully that gives you enough of an intro and reasoning that, hey, this is such an important topic. And I wanted to demonstrate this little activity with you. I just realized that I haven't got my drawing pad with me, but
go straight to
yeah. So there's two different visuals. And on one hand, if you can imagine that we walk around with two kinds of buckets inside of us. The one bucket is our empathy bucket. So this is our ability to care for people, our compassion that we have for people, the coming alongside somebody and hearing their story and feeling the pain of that story. And then we also carry something that's called a stress bucket. So this looks different for every person and might be different sized for every person. So I have the images of buckets coming up here. Now, this is the healthy set of buckets, where if you can see that the empathy is a little bit, is full. So here is where you have care and empathy and emotional energy to give in your client, with your clients, with the survivors, and stress levels are low. Now we know that this is probably not the reality for most people, that actually a lot of the time, unless you're being intentional about it, it can be the opposite. So this next slide shows what happens in an unhealthy level, where you've just been giving and giving and giving to everybody that you come across, and slowly but surely your empathy kind of gets depleted. It starts to get a bit empty. And at the same time, the stress levels are rising, and that keeps getting more and more full. And you can see how the balance changes. And this we call unhealthy. And we'll go into a little bit more detail about.
With the stress, you can think of big things like really terrible stories that you hear, or sometimes even the things that you can see, the wounds that clients have, or terrible things that you see. But maybe it's difficult with a colleague, stress at work, but there are also a lot of little stress things that fill up that bucket, like the laptop that crashes, or you want to get a coffee and the coffee beans are finished and you can't have your coffee, or you want to take a shower and there's no hot water. There are all kinds of little things that can fill up that stress bucket. And if we don't do something about that, then in the end, the stress bucket will overflow. And when it overflows, then you will get like either that you get a burnout, or compassion fatigue, or vicarious trauma. I know those are, for some people, difficult terms. I'm quickly, I don't have the definitions, but vicarious trauma is when you, we have the same trauma symptoms as of the clients that you work with, because you have heard the story so much that you kind of start to experience them yourself. Compassion fatigue is just when you have given so much empathy and compassion that you basically have nothing to give anymore.
It's like this bucket over here. Your empathy is empty.
And burnout is more that, like, when you've like been like so stressed with all kind of work problems or life events that are happening, that you get all kinds of symptoms like depression or anxiety, or sometimes all kind of physical symptoms that a doctor can't explain.
There's a list of qualities that actually make your risk factors higher, as in the chance of getting burnout, or the chance of compassion fatigue, or the chance of vicarious trauma can be higher if you can identify with some of these qualities. Now, they're not bad things, of course, but it's just something to be aware of, that means that your chance of it is higher, and therefore you have to be much more intentional or careful to really look after yourself. So that's higher levels of empathy, hearing more trauma stories or frequent trauma stories, having your own personal history of trauma, and having lower social support, so having less people to connect with or to debrief with. There's another list here. So overworking, so doing more than what is actually required of you, not having time to switch off after work and continuing into after hours. So that's having an unhealthy work-life balance. And then the newer you are in this work, the higher your risk as well. So the more experienced you are, then that decreases your risk. But of course, everybody starts out new. And then the last one is really important, stigma. So feeling a shame in seeking help, that also increases your risk in potentially getting burnout.
So we know in like quite a lot of different cultures within Asia that it is like looked upon to like go to a psychologist, and that people think that that's like that you're really crazy when you do that.
Mm.
But research has shown, even in Asia, that when you don't go to a psychologist, the chance is actually higher of getting a burnout or vicarious trauma.
All right. And then
What are the benefits? Why should we do it? Well, first of all, important, self-care is most effective when practiced proactively. What does that mean? We need to do it before something happens. So when I get traumatized and then try to do the self-care strategies, it works less good than when I first do the self-care strategies and then get confronted with something that is traumatic, or see a survivor, hear their story. When I already do the self-care strategies, I'm better protected.
and of course, it decreases the risk of burnout, decreases your stress levels, and makes you happier. So you feel more satisfied in life. So there's only good things about doing this. Yeah, next slide.
In fact, the research shows that it reduces your feeling of fatigue, so you feel more energized. Your physical health is better. You're being more present with your family and with your community, and you're more effective in your work. Now, who doesn't want to be like, who doesn't not want to have any of those things? I would.
Yeah. All right. So if you Google self-care, you get such a big range of different concepts. There's lots of different theories about what is the best way of doing it. We've just decided to pick one which seems to work really well and captures a good range of different categories. So here we have split a self-care into 4 different quadrants. So we have lifestyle, social, psychological, so that's mental and emotional, and then spiritual, so your faith. So we'll talk through examples of each of these, and hopefully you're going to get your pen and paper ready, because we will start to ask you some questions just for reflection as we go through these. So the first one, lifestyle.
When you think of lifestyle, we think of like practical things that you do in your life to take care of your body to stay healthy. And we think of a balanced diet, healthy food, a variety of fruit and veggies, and not like we see sometimes in Australia, a lot of McDonald's. Nothing wrong with McDonald's every now and then, but if you would do it like multiple times a week, it impacts your physical health in a negative way.
Mm-hmm.
We think of enough sleep. Research shows that 8 hours should be the minimum time that you are like in your bed for trying to sleep.
And by the way, if immediately your thought is, oh, I don't need 8 hours, I run off 6 hours, or I only need 4 hours. Actually, that's not true. So in the end, in 10 or 20 years, you will start to feel the effect of it. So you might think that you need less sleep, but the research overwhelmingly actually shows that it's 8 hours minimum, just to challenge you in case you were thinking else. And then, of course, regular exercise. So this is so good for your physical health, but also for your mental health. Even if it's going for a 30-minute walk a few times a week, or going for a swim, going for a light jog, playing tennis, or running in the park with your kids, or going for a swim. I think I said that one already. Yeah.
Spending time with your hobbies or other things that like really are to your interest.
Oh, you skipped the health and medical checkups.
Well, then we do that one next.
So, of course, anything related to physical health, and it is good to get checked in with your doctor at least once a year, just to make sure that your physical health is good as well.
Yeah. Decrease screen time, which is an important one, because the research shows that like the technology has a really negative effect on our brains. We need time every day to process the things that are happening on the day. But when we look at screens in all our free time, we scroll through social media or reading the news, our brain doesn't get time to process what has happened. And then as a result, often people get less sleep, because when you go to bed, it's the first time that your brain has time to start processing, or your sleep is less good because your brain is trying to do the processing in your sleep. Again, it's very technical to go into that deeper, but it is really healthy to have regular times during the day without your phone or without your computer, just to switch off for a moment.
And then most importantly is the financial health as well. Do you have enough money to live off? And are you able to save a little bit? Are you spending money on the right kinds of things, or do you waste money on things? That's a big topic also, but we know that finances is then one of the biggest stresses that some people can have. So if you can have a good budget and you have a good balance with money, then that decreases your stress.
And it doesn't mean that it always means that you need to have enough money, but it's also important that you're like on the same page with your partner about that, or that you have a plan to work with your budget, that there's hope in the finances for the future.
So based off these, what have we got here? 7 categories, 7 points. I would like you to, if you have a pen and paper with you, or even just get a little note on your phone out, and yeah, we can go to the next slide. We'll go back to it. On a personal level, so you don't need to answer this, but we would love you to just think about it and then write it down in your notepad. Under the category of lifestyle, how would you rate yourself out of 10? So thinking about those different categories, we'll go back to it to have a look at it in a sec. But 10 is the best that you possibly could get. 0 is the worst that it's ever been. So there's no right or wrong answer. You don't need to show it to anybody. Just have a think about what number would you give how you are right now in that category. All right, and then the next question. We would love you to start to have a think about one thing that you could start to improve. So in the next month, so in this category, so out of these ones here that we've looked at, what is one thing that you could focus on and try and make a change in your lifestyle over the next month? See if you can write that one down also. Now, you don't yet need to think about the details, but if you've already started wondering about it, then of course you can start to answer some of the smaller details with that, like, how am I going to do that? Or what do I need in order to make that happen? When do I do that? How often do I do that? When you go back into the lobby later, or as you clicked into this workshop, you'll see that there was a document uploaded called the self-care worksheet, So you will see a demonstration of that in a moment, but that's the place where you can start to fill in the details. But for now, just think about what's the one thing that you can commit to. All right, next category.
Social. As human beings, we are made for connection. We always want to be connected with other people. And in reality, like a big chunk of our emotions only exist in relationship with other people. That shows how important other people are in our lives. And it is important to stay connected with the people around us. Even when we work really hard, or when we are like really tired at the end of the day, we need to have contact with the people around us. So we need to stay connected with friends and family. Could be via text message or call or going for dinner, making the effort to visit them or have them visit you. To engage in the community, in the place where we live, around us.
Get to know your neighbors.
Our neighbors. It's also good to be part of a spiritual group, which could be in the church, and then not for the purpose of like worshiping your God, but because there are like many like-minded people around you that you can have connection with, fellowship. And part of the goal of it, but it's really important to have like people around you that can support you. That when you are like struggling with something, that you feel that you can talk to them about it, that you can share. Because often they say that like sharing is caring. Often if you can like share with somebody, then that already takes away a little bit of the load or the weight. And even better if like you still feel that like, hey, despite all the work that I do and the stories that I've heard and the survivors that I've worked with, I'm still able to like pay attention to like my partner or my child or my neighbor and support them. Then you know that in this area, you're in a pretty good place. But we need to be intentional to maintain those relationships. Because if we don't do that, then over time, the relationships get worse and worse, and you lose the support that you need.
So you might even be fully surrounded by people, but still not feel that anybody is supporting you. So it is also important to have people that you can trust, that you can be open and honest with. So thinking about this category, same two questions. I would love you to do a little bit of personal reflection. So write down the heading social and then write down a number out of 10. How do you rate yourself in the social domain? So 10 out of 10 would be amazing, perfect, the best possible. 0 out of 10 is awful, never been worse. Maybe 5 is somewhere in the middle, etc. So thinking about this category overall, what number would you give yourself? Once you've thought about that number, the next question is thinking about what is one thing, one activity, one person. What can you do different in the next month to try and improve that rating? So if you were at a 5, what's one thing that you can do to bring you up to a 6 or something like that?
And if you're one of the lucky people that can say that they are a 10 out of 10, then it's still important to think like, what can I do to make sure that in a month's time, I'm still a 10 out of 10. So what can you do to maintain the good position that you have, if that is the case for you?
So think about it, write it down. Now we'll move on to the next category. Psychological. So here is a range of different things. And keep in mind, it's both emotional and mental. So anything from your mind. So the first one, self-awareness and self-reflection. Do you give yourself time at the end of the day to think over what happened in the day and how you went and what happened and what could you learn from that, or what could you do better next time?
What were the emotions that you felt? What are the thoughts that you were thinking? What was going on through your mind? Are you aware of those? And can you reflect on that, think about them?
And then connected to that, so being able to notice what is that emotion, and if it's a difficult emotion, do you know what to do with that emotion? Do you know what to do if you're feeling sad, or if you're feeling angry, or if you're feeling worried? Or does that emotion completely overwhelm you and you get flooded with that emotion and then can't focus? Because that's not a good thing. You want to know how to manage those difficult emotions as they come up.
Are you aware and can you engage in the different roles that you have? Because of course, you have your role at work, but you're also a husband or a wife, or you're a friend to somebody, or a neighbor to somebody, or when you're like maybe making dinner for the family, you're a chef, or when you're like working in the house to repair something, you're the maintenance guy. We all have many different roles in our lives. Are we aware of them? Are we engaging with them in a way that like, hey, now I feel that I'm the chef, or I feel that I'm the maintenance guy, or I feel that I'm the father or mother to my child at this moment.
Do you set limits on what you know you can do or what you can't do? Are you able to say no? Things like that are also really important. Or do you just keep saying yes to things, which also is not a good thing?
Do we try to do things absolutely perfect? And it's good to do things as good as we can, but perfection is almost beyond our reach.
The attitude of gratitude.
That's my favorite.
At the end of the day, do you have part of that reflection? Can you think about the things that you are grateful for, even if it's been a bad day, even if it's been a rough day? Are you still able to focus on the positives that happened, or things that you achieved, or things that you're thankful for?
So yeah, hearing the story of that client was like really difficult, or she was really difficult to manage. But hey, she had a beautiful smile at that moment that we were talking about something. Or hey, it was really nice that that colleague came and gave me like a cup of tea when I was busy working. Or I was just like driving on my motorbike outside and I saw this beautiful bird flying past. Are we aware of those things, and can we recognize those things as something positive and beautiful?
The second on the list here is, then the last one we'll mention here is, are you willing or are you able to have your own counselor or your own therapist when you notice that those emotions are getting overwhelming, or if you've experienced something traumatic? Are you willing to talk to somebody, or do you have the chance to do that? Because that's a good thing to do it when you need to. So this is a big list. It covers a lot of topics. Have a think about it for yourself. How would you rate how you're going in the psychological or the mental and emotional? 10 out of 10 is fantastic, doing really well. 0, terrible, or somewhere in between. See if you can rate yourself just with an average number, an overall number. And then, as you know by now, the next question is, what is one thing that you can invest in the next month? Is there one of these topics or points that stands out to you the most that you know, okay, I actually do a really bad job in this and I need to work on that? Or
maybe you think I do a good job in it, but I can actually do better.
Yeah.
So I'm going to focus on doing it better.
See if you can write that down. And the last one, the spiritual category. Now, you can interpret this from the religious perspective, but it doesn't have to be. Now, we know that we talk to lots of people of different faiths or even people of no faith, but it's still relevant regardless of what your faith is.
Because the spiritual domain has things like your purpose and meaning in life. What is the purpose of your life? What's the goal in like the meaning that you find in the work that you do? And we noticed that especially during the COVID time, when people needed to work a lot from home, that they felt less connected with the work and the vision and the mission and the purpose of the work that they were doing. But even when we are like at the office, and you can get like into like that habit of the everyday work, that you kind of lose your awareness and your perspective on like, hey, what is the purpose and the meaning of my job? And sometimes we have the same experience when it is about our family or the community that we live in.
Values sits under the spiritual as well. So do you know what's important to you? Do you know what you're passionate about? Do you know why you do the work that you do? What about with your family? Are you raising your family in the way that you want to be doing it? In teaching your children values that are important to you and want them to know? Do you have life goals? Are there specific things that you want to achieve or that you want to do through your work or outside of work? Do you attend a faith community? If you have a religion, are you going to the mosque or the synagogue or the church or the temple? Are you engaging with that, or do you have your own personal devotion and quiet time?
And do you have hope? And with hope, it's not that we think like, oh, I hope that one day I can do this or that. But hope is more like that strong internal sense of that, like, hey, there will be something good today, or my tomorrow can be better than my today.
So same with the last three categories, we'd love you to now just reflect on this for yourself personally. How would you rate yourself in the category of spiritual? What number would you give? How are you going in that? And then is there one thing in particular you could invest in, you could focus on and bring into your schedule over the next month? Do you perhaps need to spend some time to think about what your life goals are, or write down what your values are? Or do you need to go back into a faith community if you felt like that was important to you, but you haven't done that in a while? See if you can commit to one thing and write that down. So you've basically done the intro so far of the self-care plan, and I will show you what this looks like. So it's a little bit like this. If you haven't been able to get a copy of that self-care worksheet, send us your email address and we can send an email to you about that afterwards. Yep. You could also, Martin is going to copy this link into the chat now. And if you click on that, then you should be able to download it. That's okay. Because this will be helpful for you. You don't have to have it, but it might just be a guide. So if you didn't already download it, then this might be helpful for you. What you want to do is fill in some of these other questions. You may not have time to do it now. We'll just give you the overview, but it's definitely good to spend some time maybe later this afternoon or tomorrow to complete this. So those 4 categories, you will have already written down or thought about one thing that you want to commit to. So that's this first row, or what do you call it, column. And the most important thing then to do is to be as specific as possible. So that's why we've got these 3 other questions next to each one. How much am I going to do? When am I going to do that? And who am I going to do that with? Or do I do it by myself? Could be both or either. The more specific you are, the more likely it is that you're going to make a change in this. If you give something very broad or vague, then you're less likely to commit to it.
So let me give a practical example, and I'll pick randomly social. What am I going to do? Well, I haven't seen a couple of my friends for a while, so I want to see my friends again. What am I going to do? Seeing friends. How much am I going to do? I'm going to try once a week in the evening. When am I going to do it? Well, given my busyness with work, probably the Thursday night would work best. So I'm going to try to do it on the Thursday evening. And who am I going to do it with? Well, the first week I'm going to do it with Peter, my friend. And then in the second week, I'm going to try to catch up with Andrew.
So you'll need a bit of time, after this to go over it. We'll move on to the next section because the next part to it is something that you actually do in 1 month's time. So after you've finished finished writing down the self-care plan, then of course you want to have a go at each category and making a change in each topic, and then try and keep that up. And then in 1 month's time, see how you went. So remind yourself. So maybe you need to even set a reminder in your calendar now to say, in 1 month's time, I'm going to review my self-care plan. And the next section is then how you review it. So, on the 20th of August, we've fast forwarded into the future. In 1 month's time, I'm now going to review how did I go on that social activity, as an example.
So in my example, it would then be social, my strategy, what did I want to do, catching up with friends, how well did I implement this strategy? Well, I think it was like a 3 out of 5 because I did meet up with Peter, but I couldn't meet up with Andrew. How did my well-being improve? Well, I really enjoyed catching up with Peter, and we had a really good chat, and I felt really supported. So my well-being was really improved. Do I need to revise it or change it? Well, I didn't meet up with Andrew because the Thursday night in hindsight wasn't the best night because I'm tired at the end of the work week. So I can better try to do it on a Tuesday night when I'm still a little bit more energized.
So then that gives you a new plan. So you can do that in each category. And then, for the next month, I'm going to try and do something social on a Tuesday instead. And then you can review it again in September and see how that went. So it just helps you to keep accountable to doing the activity and reviewing it.
And when it went really well, then you can just start with a new plan on that category. So it could be that if your social plan went really well, that you then think well, this goes well, I'm going to maintain that, but I haven't spoken to my neighbors over the last month. So I'm going to add that to my plan.
The good thing about this activity or this approach is you can also think about it specific for work. So each of the 4 categories that we've used, you could use that specifically within your work context. So as an example in lifestyle, am I taking breaks in between my clients? Do I take a lunch break? That's an example of doing something lifestyle related at work. Social would be, do I interact with my colleagues? Do I ask them how they're doing? Yeah, how their day is. Am I able to debrief with them if I've had something difficult? Psychological could also be,
do I think of like a couple of things that I can be grateful for this day in specifically what happened at work?
Yeah. The spiritual category, thinking about the purpose and meaning. If something difficult has happened, can I make sense of that out of my worldview? Do I still believe that God loves me and God cares for me? And even though something difficult has happened,
do I still have hope for that tomorrow will be a better day? Or do I specifically need to focus on something that will happen tomorrow that can be positive?
So as the advanced or the extended version of the self-care plan, you could do that separate one, just thinking about it from work or in your organization. That would benefit you as well. And as you can see here, it prevents and decreases those hazards related to burnout and compassion fatigue, vicarious trauma, etc. So thinking about it for yourself, just a quick bonus question. How would you rate yourself related to self-care at work? What kind of number would you put down for that? And then thinking about your work context, is there one activity that you could work on that will improve your environment, improve your well-being at work in the next month? So I think there's been a few comments in the chat. We can go over anything that anybody has been unsure about or would like us to clarify on. Any comments or questions at this point?
There were a couple of questions about the amount of sleep that you need when you get older.
Okay.
You're more in the research around sleep. Do you want to comment on that?
Yeah. So that would actually be, I think, a myth. So people believe that we need less sleep as we get older, just because the older you get, the more difficult it is to sleep well. But it actually isn't that you need less sleep. It just becomes more difficult to sleep. So it's still important for, as you get older, to get adequate sleep, because it is the lack of sleep that actually starts to cause physical health problems. So there's a link with Alzheimer's or dementia with the lack of sleep. So there's a clear link in that. So it is a high priority to make sure that you still get enough sleep even as you get older.
And a different thing that I think is good to clarify, which has nothing to do with sleep, but with the 4 categories of the self-care plan. All 4 are important. If you're doing well in one area, it's not that like, well, I'm doing well in that area and therefore my self-care is good. We need all 4 in order to stay healthy in the long run.
Oh, sorry, let me just stay on that slide. Any other burning questions, or is it all pretty clear so far? So a reminder again, if you didn't see that self-care worksheet. If you couldn't find it on the lobby, then feel free to just, or even if that Google Drive link didn't work for you, send us your email address and we'll make sure that we can send it to you. And also, if you're interested in this presentation slide, if you haven't been able to get a copy of that, then send us an email and we can send that through to you also. Oh yeah, our email address, that's important.
Yeah.
So you can contact us by email or on WhatsApp, or obviously if you put it into the chat now, then we'll review that also. Well, that concludes our presentation. We don't have any more content for you, so happy to open it up for any other comments or thoughts about it then. And otherwise, then all the best with implementing your self-care plan. I hope it's been helpful for you. I hope it's been constructive, that you've thought about new things that perhaps you hadn't thought of before. And yeah, that it is useful for you, and make sure that you set a reminder to review it in 1 month's time to check how you're going with that. All the best with it, everybody.
And a month after.
Yes.
And a month after. And a month after.
Wow, that was an amazing session, Martin and Claudette. Thank you so much. Incredibly practical.
You're welcome.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
So yeah, also I love that you gave us the entire framework, and at the end of the day, this is about us like being accountable to ourselves. So just very much appreciated the practicality of this. And every so often I was kind of smiling to myself as I'm scoring myself, going, oh.
I'm glad it's been helpful for you too, Helen.
So it's like, okay, self-care at work.
Great. Yeah.
So this has been amazing. Thank you so much, and all the best in your work. And for everybody, we are taking a 15-minute break, and then we will have, I cannot believe, our final session in, yes, just over 15 minutes. That will be our final keynote altogether. Courage and conviction, and preparing for the next phase of the anti-trafficking movement. Of course, all of these sessions are being recorded, so you can go back and you can rewatch whatever you want, or if for some of you, like the sessions were in like the early hours of the morning, for me, I'll be watching those later today. So see you all in about 15 minutes. Thank you so much, everyone. Take care.
Thank you for joining. It was our pleasure, and see you all around.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.